Welcome to my basement intersection. This is going to be the 2018 walkthrough video of my signal display. What you're looking at here head on is the main street displays, which I have set up essentially as two separate intersections. So the front four-ways are simulating a near side intersection, and the back wall signals are simulating a far side intersection. So that the way that these signals will sequence, as you'll see here in a few seconds again, the front four-ways will turn green first, simulating how a vehicle can begin through the first set of lights. Then as it approaches the second set of lights, they'll turn green in the wave fashion. So, and then returning back to red, the first intersection will turn red first. Then there's an offset of a few seconds, and then the second set will turn red, and then allowing the cross traffic to proceed. This is the side street display. One wall of the side street display, and then the other wall is over here. So the first signal we're going to take a look at is this GE four-way. This GE four-way, I have a video on my channel highlighting it in pretty good detail about how I acquired it and where it came from and all of that. But the short version is I purchased this off a small town down in southwest Michigan called Coldwater. I purchased it and the matching one that hung with it at the same intersection back in November of 2016. And I sold off the second signal to a local collector, but I kept this GE four-way for my display. So, but what's kind of neat about this signal, or these two GEs in particular, is back in 2010, I went through the town and was able to get photos of them hanging. They were still in service. Got photos of them hanging over the street. And at the time, back in 2010, I wasn't expecting to purchase these signals. So it was kind of neat to have photos of it. So I had a couple pictures that I took printed out, and I have them hanging near the signal. Here's one up on my ductwork. This is the actual signal that is in my collection. So that's it hanging over the street when it was in service. Here's a couple more, another set of another photo of the set of signals. The one in the foreground is mine. The one in the background that's kind of cut off a little bit, that is the one I sold off. So it matched the one I have. And then I've got another photo down here that I didn't hang up yet. This is a street scene of the pair in operation, the one on the right being mine and the one on the left being the one I sold. So it's pretty cool to have a piece in the collection that I have street shots of. Kind of adds to the neat factor of this particular piece. So again, if you wanted to see this signal in a little bit more detail, there is a video on my channel highlighting this signal specifically. Up here on the wall, the first signal is a black Eagle Durasig pedestrian signal. It's kind of a no-frills Eagle Durasig. This was my second signal in the collection, and it operates actually when you press the crosswalk button down here. So we'll get to see it sequence. So this Eagle Durasig pedestrian signal was the second signal in my collection. It's got hand and man standard Eagle polycarbonate lenses, and basically just kind of hung it up and cleaned it up and hung it up. Nothing really too crazy about this particular signal. Now the one next to it is an Econolite long groove head. It's from the mid 1950s or so. This was my first restoration project. I restored this back in 2002, and it's not the best restoration job ever. I was in my early teens when I did it, so I kind of skimped out a little bit. This yellow finish that I repainted it is a little bit too bright of a yellow for a signal, and then I went and did the visors completely in black because it was easier to do at the time. But the finish itself is in good shape, so I decided to keep this paint scheme after that. So I don't plan on repainting it anytime soon. When I received this signal, it had red, yellow, and green ball lenses. I swapped out the yellow and green ball lenses for the arrow lenses that are in the Signal currently. A couple of years ago, because I wanted it to simulate a left turn sequence, the Michigan style flashing red ball that is slowly being phased out for the flashing yellow arrow. So that's what the Signal is sequencing as. The Signal next to it in the center here is a flatback Eagle. This was my first Signal in the collection. Collectors tend to call this the trapezoid flatback because of the design on the back side, which is easier to show than to explain. But there's these trapezoid shapes that flank the Eagle logo on the top and bottom of each section. And it's not really clear as to why those trapezoid shapes are there. It probably has something to do with how the die was made to cast the housings. This Signal is from the early 60s, probably about 62, and around 65 they stopped making this Signal with the trapezoid shapes. So the later models didn't have that shape cast into the body. So this is my first Signal in the collection, and didn't do a thing to it other than clean it up and hang it. I've had it for over 20 years now. So the Signal next to it is an Eagle Lux, which is just an earlier version of the Eagle Signal line. You can see that the two paired next to each other. They look somewhat similar. The Eagle Lux is from the late 50s or so, mid 50s. It's a little bit more ornate. You can see that the body itself has some more design to it, a little bit more Art Deco-like. Also, there's these decorative fins near the, on the bottom and the top, which the later model flatback has those absent. Another difference between these two Signals is the flatback model on the left has totally enclosed complete sections. Each compartment is its own separate section, where the Eagle Lux has open-ended sections and two tie rods going through the entire length of the Signal. And these decorative end caps here, these are actually plates, so that close off the Signal head. So they're not enclosed like the flatback is the later model. So the Eagle Lux actually came it was a three-way cluster, and I purchased only the one Signal from the cluster from a local collector who did the repaint job on it. And I'm kicking myself now because I kind of wish that I got the whole cluster and not just the one Signal from it. But still, a very nice piece to have in my collection. This pedestrian Signal in the corner here, this is an ICC, or Indicator Control Corporation countdown pedestrian signal with a GE LED countdown fixture in it. Repainted the housing black a couple of years back and installed the GE LED module into it. So this was put together by me. Didn't see street service in this configuration, but this is a good example of a countdown pedestrian signal in my display. And it's operated along with a 9-inch Durasig, you'll see in a few seconds, by that crosswalk button. The signal here has a green arrow on it. This big 12-inch flashing yellow arrow, Eagle Durasig vehicle signal, left turn. I put this signal together out of parts I received at different times over the course of a couple of years. I received the GE LED arrows and the housings from one collector, and then I received the tunnel visors from another collector. So put this signal together to have an example of one of the new style left turn signals popping up like weeds all over the country, really, but all over my local area. So you can see here the walk signal came on because I pushed the button. The walk signal is on over on the other side of the display as well. Because the walk signal is active, the controller is omitting the flashing yellow sequence for this cycle, so that vehicles don't turn in front of a pedestrian in the crosswalk. That's a common function on some newer controllers. So that's why you're just seeing the red arrow versus the flashing yellow arrow. But this next sequence that comes up will have the flashing yellow return. This the signal next to the flashing yellow arrow is an InnoLight electronically steerable beam programmable signal. You can see how it works. If you look at it head on, you can see the full red ball. Or now you got a green arrow, but it's designed so that the signal is only visible at certain angles and certain directions. Out on the street, it would be a lot more. Sharp of a contrast between the on-axis and off-axis. Here down in my basement, it's not as easy to see. But the InnoLight model uses software and electronics to steer the light beam versus optics like the 3M and the McCain programmable signal uses. Another cool thing about this signal, when you see it from the street, it's kind of hard to mistake because it's got these massive heat sinks on the back of each housing. So it's kind of easy to find on the street. You just got to look for the giant heat sinks on the back of the signal head. So that's the InnoLight. I received that from a contractor down in St. Louis, Missouri, who was pitching it. And the signal next to that, to the InnoLight, is another programmable signal, but this is the more common 3M Model 131 that is pretty well liked among collectors and general roadway enthusiasts, just because they look so space-aged in their design, futuristic. But this signal, instead of using software, it's a little bit older of a design. It just uses optical series of lenses and optics. And then if you want to cut down the beam even more, you can apply an optical tape to the lenses inside the signal. Right now I don't have anything, I don't have any tape on any of the lenses, so I've got the full view, almost a full view of the signal. But this signal came out of, I believe it was Kansas or Nebraska, somewhere out that way. So it's one of the more desirable signals that collectors tend to want to grab. I had bought this one back in 2002 when they were still being made. Both the InnoLight and the 3M signal heads are not being made anymore. 3M stopped in 2007. InnoLight stopped, I think, about 2015. So cool pieces to have in my collection. The final signal here on this wall is a Dialight prototype signal with integrated LEDs. I purchased this signal brand new from the factory a couple of years back. There's also a video of this signal on my channel, highlighting in detail the ins and outs and how it's set up and all of that. It's on my channel, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but it is brand new, fresh out of the box from the factory. You can see it's still got the factory sheen on it. They're not making this signal anymore. This was just a prototype design, so I snagged one when I could while they still were making some trials. So that's the Dialight head. Up here at the corner, hanging just a few inches above the cabinet, is a 9-inch Eagle Durasig pedestrian signal. This is my OSM freebie, if you will. This is one of the signal meets that take place down in Ohio. I picked this signal up in the free pile, and a couple of years after that, I picked up the walk and don't walk lenses out of the free pile of the same meet a couple of years later and put the signal together. So signal didn't cost me a thing other than the spray paint that I purchased to give it the gloss black finish. This signal here is a 8-inch TCT, or Traffic Control Technologies, a doghouse signal. I purchased this off a local collector who was selling it off. The only thing that I really did to this signal was rewire it to operate with my cabinet, and then I changed the arrows over from left turn arrows to right turn arrows, and they work in tandem with the flashing yellow arrow sequence. So when that turns to a green arrow, the doghouse will display a green arrow with a red ball. So that's the TCT doghouse. The brackets for the doghouse are custom made by the prior owner, so that everything fits together pretty good, versus using 12-inch hardware, and all the sections would be way too far apart and too wide for 8-inch housings. And the last signal in this part of the display is a Crouse-Hinds Type M 4-way. This is my first 4-way out of the two. I restored this back in 2006. I purchased it off of a collector that's, unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago. But he told me that it served in the city of Pottsville, Pennsylvania. So, pretty cool signal head. I wish I had photos of this one in service, but I can't seem to find any photos of this signal on any historic website or anything. But that's my Crouse-Hinds Type M 4-way with nice yellow restored paint job on it. And then the last signal we're going to take a look at is over here. This signal is another Eagle Durasig, and this was an unexpected grab locally. If you're familiar with the southeast Michigan area, this signal served at the intersection of Hall Road, or M59, and Shaner. They were actually doing some work on M59 last year, and this signal, I remember it going up back in '95 when they did a reconstruction project on M59 at that time to convert it into a divided highway. And I was just going through the intersection doing other errands when the crew was out taking these signals down, so I just pulled over to the side of the road and went and talked to the foreman. He said, just grab whatever you wanted, so I grabbed this one because it was the easiest to throw into the back of my car. And I walked away with a piece that I've driven under countless times. I learned how to drive under this signal. I went to school passing this signal, went to work passing this signal. Now I've got it in my display. So pretty neat to have a local signal like that in my display as well. So that's the signal display and the walkthrough video for 2018. Hope you enjoyed, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact me.